other night, my 10-year-old threw up the 2 bites of quinoa that I made him eat. Yes. It is. I looked at my older son, I said, see, that's what it takes to get out of eating your dinner. That level of commitment.
It's the Mike Nowak Show with Peggy Malecki. Green, gardening, and environment radio. Flavored with a dash of humor. Welcome to intelligent, irreverent talk about plants and the planet they grow on. Your questions, comments, and participation are always welcome at 877-711-5611.
Good planets are hard to find. Temperate zones and tropic climes. True currents and thriving seas. Wind blowing through breathing trees. Strong ozone and safe sunshine. Well, good planets are hard to find. Good planets are in demand.
This hour is brought to you by Bartlett Tree Experts. Every tree needs a champion. Go to bartlett.com.
Jet streams, perfect air.
And here they are, Peggy Malecki and Mike Nowak.
Well, good planets are in demand.
Right.
Right. And welcome to the show. Hello, everybody, and all the folks watching us on various streaming media and listening to us on various streaming audio and even AM and FM radio. Hope you're all having a great day. We have a terrific show for you today. We're talking farmers markets. We're talking community gardens later on, and what is happening in the city of Chicago that is making it very, very difficult for urban farms and community gardens to do their own work and grow things. But today we start the program because we have just entered into National Farmers Market Week. There we go, which gets a ding. And so we bring back some folks to the show, a very serious Jonathan Pereira there, and not so serious Janie Maxwell. Janie is the executive director of the Illinois Farmers Market Association. She has been on the show before. In fact, we talked in May about what farmers markets were doing to prepare to open in a COVID-19 pandemic. And we're going to talk about some of that today because markets have opened. I went to a farmer's market for the first time last Sunday, and it was an interesting experience. I'll talk about that a little bit. We also have the very serious, okay, now he's smiling, Jonathan Pereira, who's the executive director of Plant Chicago on Chicago's South Side. And they have their own farmers market, which we're going to talk about in just a second. But we're going to start by going out to Lincoln, Nebraska, to a friend of mine, Gary Fehr, who's with Green School Farms. Is that indeed the name? You're going to have to unmute yourself there, Gary. Is that the name of your farm? Do you call yourself, or you are? Whoa, okay. Are you there?
I am. I'm sorry for the noise. People are driving in, setting up. So
that's okay, because you're at a farmer's market in Lincoln, Nebraska.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. And the name of the farm is Green School Farms. Besides selling at market, we are trying to work with local schools and get some healthy food into their cafeterias. And so that's one of our passions as well, to get kids to learn about where their food comes from, learn about what's important in their food, and learn to appreciate it.
Well, we're going to start with you because you're at the farmer's market. You've brought your produce to the market, and you have to set up and go at 10 a.m. So right. I decided that let's jump off into this conversation with Gary because he's on site already, and he's in a different state from our state of Illinois. And I'm kind of curious about what farmers markets have been like in this age of COVID.
Yeah, so that's a great question, and we weren't even sure that this is a popular market in Lincoln, and we weren't even sure this year that it was going to be able to open because of COVID, and what were the social distancing guidelines on something open air event like this. But the market did an awesome job of getting everything set up and rearranged so it's safe for both the vendors and the customers. So they've done things like spaced out the booths, double distance from what they were before. We use rope barriers to keep customers, safely away from the tables of produce. We all have to wear masks. Of course, I'm not wearing it right now because I'm talking, but so those are some of the things we're doing, and foot traffic in one direction, those types of things. So yeah, we're open. We've been open since end of March or end of May.
Are those guidelines still in place? The one-way traffic, especially.
Yeah.
I went to a farmer's market on Sunday that actually had two-way traffic. It was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'll talk about that in a little bit. But you're still sticking to the guidelines you started with.
Right. Yeah, and every market's a little bit different. It's all governed by local recommendations and what the board decides is safe and that type of thing.
So what would you say has been the response of folks this year? What is your feeling as a vendor, and how do you think people are responding to having open farmers markets?
Well, I think for the most part, everybody's been really understanding and supportive, and they recognize that this is a situation none of us like. We would love to have it like it was last year, but the reality is, we have to do what we have to do. And so everybody cooperates. Sales are kind of unpredictable because of, in some cases, people buy more of some things, and in other cases, the traffic is maybe not as the foot traffic is not as heavy some weeks. But so it's like everything else in our world, COVID has just thrown a wrench into things, and we're all just trying to deal with it, as best we can.
You mentioned to me the other day that you were doing some experimenting with online sales, and for a while that was actually pretty good. Tell me about that experience.
Right. So a couple things that were different this year is in the spring, before a lot of the produce gets going, I do a lot of gardening plant sales. So people want to buy tomato plants, pepper plants, cucumbers for their gardens. What we saw was that this year there was a huge spike in sales in that because, and I'm assuming people wanted to, what their reasons were is that they wanted to have something to do that they could do with their kids and stay at home and be safe. And so saw a huge spike in those sales. But we also we did want to shift to providing online sales as well. And that was, so we set up a website, people can pre-order and they can come to the market and pick up, or we offer a $5 home delivery charge. We'll drop it at their door for no contact delivery. So yeah, just some things, and other vendors are doing similar things. So it's been,
right.
Been interesting.
So what is your bottom line? How has that been this year?
Bottom line, I would say it's probably down. There are other factors in it as well. Just my business plan for this year, I was going to make some changes anyway, so some variables might be at play here, but it's down. But like I said, some things surprisingly went really well.
Okay, so a little bit of this, a little bit of that.
Yeah,
and
and
you're getting by.
Right.
Okay. All right, I'm going to ask you to mute because I can hear stuff going on in the background.
Yep.
We'll get back to you. That's Gary Fehr in Lincoln, Nebraska with Green School Farms. He also helps donate food to We Can Do This, We Feed the Kids at F Street Community Center every weekend. That's another project that he's involved in. Oh, good. Show us. Yeah, Gary, while you're doing this, give us some shots of the produce and the market with the sound off, and that's great. We have a couple of minutes here before we break, and there'll be plenty of time for everybody here today. So let's go to Janie. What Gary was talking about, and again, Janie is the executive director of the Illinois Farmers Market Association. Welcome back to the show. Is what Gary's describing pretty much what you're hearing in Illinois and other states? You need to unmute.
Yes. What Gary is describing is what we're seeing in Illinois. We're seeing area by area adopt their own level of regulation. For example, the city of Chicago still has very strict regulations in place for shopping at a farmer's market. Whereas you go to different parts of the state, you may see that things are just a little bit more relaxed, depending on what the local rules and the local jurisdictions are recommending. But really, we were pushing back to just get markets open. That was the really big deal. And so deeming farmers markets as essential, food access points was really the key in getting farmers markets open. So a lot of markets have adopted the model that, instead of that great community gathering place that we all love, they really are selling essential products, food and related things. And that's really their business model for this season. Get people in, get people out, keep the vendors, keep the customers safe as possible, and make sure that the farmer has a place to actually sell their product.
Have all of the markets in Illinois opened?
Peggy, time to break. We will get to that question when we come back. It's the Mike Nowak Show with Peggy Malecki talking to Janie Maxwell, Jonathan Pereira, and Gary Fehr about farmers markets, and we'll have more when we return. All right, welcome back to the Mike Nowak Show with Peggy Malecki, and we know what the farmer says is work. As Jonathan knows, as Gary knows, that's Jonathan Pereira from Plant Chicago, Gary Fehr from Green School Farms. He's in Lincoln, Nebraska, and if you're watching live on the YouTube stream, the used tubes stream or the Facebook.
The used or is that used?
Today's used. Used tubes and the face block. He's out there at the market in Lincoln. And Janie Maxwell, Executive Director of the Illinois Farmers Market Association. Janie, Peggy had a really good question during the break about how many farmers markets are open right now. Did they all get open pretty much in Illinois?
I wish that was the case, but unfortunately, a number of markets have determined that there are too many challenges, that whether it's in staffing or, again, many of our smaller markets are run completely by volunteers, that the requirements of running a market during COVID were just too big for that particular market. We have a running list. It's 25, it's probably more than that. But what there was at the beginning was a significant delay in market openings. And so some markets still say they're delayed and are looking for an August open. But that's concerning, especially as the season, is peaking. We want to make sure that the producers have an opportunity to get their product to a market right now.
Jonathan, you're a market that's open on the south side of Chicago. Tell us a little bit about your market and the challenges you had this year.
We, Plant Chicago's market opened up in a new location at Davis Square Park on the southwest side of Chicago, and we were actually the first market to get licensed and opened by the city. So we opened the first Saturday in June, and like many markets are facing this conundrum of, in the past, you're like, we want to get as many people here as possible to support these farmers and their operations. But at the same time this year dealing with, we don't want too many people all at the same time. So we tempered our opening and really actually just through our newsletter and social media challenges says, please, if you don't live near us, just hang off for a little bit until we kind of get this under control. Right now, I think we're definitely ready, like many markets are, to host a lot more people. We have also just really been focused on the southwest side. So we are link matching. We're matching produce for anyone who has, matching dollars for anybody who has link cards.
And
to
what
$25.
What are link cards, Jonathan, for our listeners?
Yep, link cards are SNAP benefits in the state of Illinois. So for food, which many people are through the federal government comes in Illinois, it's called the link card. So you get a card with benefits on it to help purchase food. So in Illinois, when you have a link card, you can, you're spending it for food, but the challenge with that, especially with farmers markets, is that most farmers can't take it or don't take it, or the application process is difficult to get it. If you are using it at a typical grocery store, you're not getting access to locally grown in-season produce. It's still coming from very far away generally. So a farmer's market is often the only spot where many residents, especially in urban environments, can get access to locally grown produce.
Are you getting a lot of link traffic in there, or is that something you're really trying to push?
We're really trying to push. We're getting more. So we just relaunched our market in a new location, and focusing on that. But yes, we're getting more steadily every week. We're parallel to that because we recognize that there are people who didn't want to come into social settings with a lot of different people. We're offering a linked produce box on an alternate day outside of our market, and partnering with the Urban Canopy, and essentially offering that produce box, which is filled with locally grown produce, for half off for Link customers. So they can come pick up a produce box during the week for contactless transactions.
That's a great program. Let's talk to Gary, because then we're going to let him go in just a couple of minutes. Is there a similar thing in Nebraska with SNAP programs?
Yeah, I mean, at the market, we have a couple different ways that works. We have the SNAP coupons, and we also have a token program that underserved people, that they can get access to tokens and use them as cash at the booths. So yeah, great programs.
So before we let you go today, what did you bring today? What do you like that you're growing? How's the growing season going for you, Gary?
The growing season has it's been really well. There's been, the tomatoes, the peppers, the cucumbers have been ready earlier than I ever remember, and I wish I could take credit for some sort of expertise there, but Mother Nature just, was worked well this year. So today I've got some sweet corn, I've got some potatoes, I've got cherry tomatoes are always popular. I've got Persian style cucumbers, which are a mini snacking cucumber. Those sell really well. And then, onions, regular cucumbers, zucchini, tomatoes. Yeah, lots of good stuff.
And before we let you go, tell us a little bit about this We Can Do This, We Feed the Kids at F Street.
Right. So, right now we're all concerned, about all of the different types of systemic oppression in our society that we're having difficult conversations about, and part of that is for me as a farmer is food justice, and how can we get food to people that really need it, who might otherwise not be able to afford it. A great program at one of the rec centers in town is called We Can Do This, and it's a program that I've been donating food to. And what they do is they prepare meals and or distribute the produce to send home with kids who might otherwise not have, access to nutritious meals. So it's a wonderful program, and just one of, there's many programs like that in this area, but food justice is near and dear to my heart.
Gary, thank you so much. You're right, it's a kind of a minor miracle that we got you on live.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much, and continued good luck, and thanks for your good work. We'll be back with Jonathan Pereira and Janie Maxwell right after this break. It's the Mike Nowak Show with Peggy Malecki. Please stick around. And I forgot, Jonathan, that you were the first to open up in the city. Was that the plan, or did it just happen to all come together?
That was called perseverance. That was called sheer determination.
And we are live on Facebook, so you guys know.
Okay.
Yeah, we were actually planning on opening in March, so we were going to open indoors, and then obviously postponed that. So yeah, we had plans to open our market much earlier than June. So in some ways, yeah, we were ready. We actually had to adapt the first few weeks and not do it in Davis Square Park. We did it in the side lot to our property. So we did a lot of adjustments, and as a smaller market, we can be much more flexible like that.
That's true.
Markets
Yeah,
in
it
the
looks
city, like if you
I was going to say, it looks like you have, 5 or 6 vendors currently?
Yeah, so again, we started deliberately small, focusing on the produce side. We typically will have at least one rotating, dry goods, something a little bit more that's not perishable at the market, and very much focusing on trying to focus on the southwest side as much as possible. So the vendors, Cedillo's Fresh Produce is there every week, Abram Farm outside of the city, and Back of the Arts Coffee, our neighbors down here, Pixie Dust Salts, beautiful. Honey, bee, beautiful. Sorry, I should emphasize the bee.
Beautiful.
Bee, yeah, beautiful, beautiful. And then Quarter Mile Hot Sauce. So those other vendors like salts and hot sauce are rotating. And we're also combining it. We do have a retail space that is going through a sort of perpetual soft open right now because we don't want many people going through it. But a lot of the non-perishable stuff can be found there as well during the week.
Weed by weed, boy, this garden's got me teed. All the insects come to feed in my tomato plants. Sunburn face.
A little bit. Thank you, Arlo Guthrie. The insects don't come to feed on mine. I believe the squirrels are. And in the segment after this, Peggy, you and I are going to have a little chat about critters that come after your plants in the backyard. Welcome back to the Mike Nowak Show with Peggy Malecki. We're talking to Janie Maxwell, Executive Director of the Illinois Farmers Market Association, Jonathan Pereira, Executive Director of Plant Chicago on the South Side. Let's get into that question I asked during the break, which is the building is called The Plant on the South Side, and it's all about sustainability. And your Plant Chicago, at one point you guys were together and now you're kind of separate. Can you explain what happened there?
Sure. The Plant Chicago is a nonprofit that was associated and housed out of the plant for over 8 years. We worked a long time to support that project. It got to a point last year really where the for-profit community there could really sustain itself. Last November, we moved into a new location, a little bit more in line with our current mission and values, which is to cultivate local circular systems and be much more embedded in the community where we're located. So our new home is a former firehouse just 4 blocks away, across the street from Davis Square Park, in kind of the heart of a residential section of Back of the Yards. We kind of bridge the gap between the commercial corridor on Ashland and the residential section just west of that, the primary residential section of Back of the Yards. And we're in the process of repurposing that former firehouse to be a center for circular economy programming. So before the outbreak of COVID, we had already launched our school programs in the new space. We had a bright open event space. We had hosted the Midwest Urban Farmers Summit and had started rebuilding some of our new aquaponic and hydroponic systems in this farm. Obviously, with the outbreak of COVID, we don't have as many school programs. We don't have any school programs going on in the space, and many schools are still figuring out what they're actually doing on the first day of school. So we're going along with the flow there. But as a part of that space, the next big development project in it is to build out an indoor victory garden, a shared use indoor growing space where a mixture of early stage entrepreneurs and hobbyists can learn how to grow indoors. So we actually provide them the infrastructure to be able to grow and learn indoors.
Okay, thank you, Jonathan. Janie, as you can see, that's a success story. As you mentioned earlier, and even though, as Jonathan says, their farmers market is small, you said a lot of farmers markets couldn't even ramp up this year. Here in Logan Square, where I live, it opened in June, I believe, but towards the end of June. I mean, that's late into the season. Are these markets going to be able to survive this? And if they do, how much longer can they deal with this kind of a situation?
Boy, it's really been a challenging season. That's why one of the themes of National Farmers Market Week is that your farmers market manager is a local food hero. Because in many ways, many of these farmers market managers have had to create multiple markets this season. And for example, many of them are currently hybrid markets. So they're offering like even the plant, we're talking about multiple types of opportunities for people to buy or purchase locally grown food. So it has required a lot of these particular farmers market managers, and then it's required a lot of resilience from our farmers, trying to find ways to potentially market their product at the for sale at the farmers market, but then also offering, like we even heard Gary talk about, some enhanced options to deal with the overflow of what they can't quite move during the market day. So maybe it's delivery, maybe it's online purchasing, whatever the system may be. A number of farmers also report that although they may not have as many transactions per day, people are buying more, so that it's not a recreational trip to the farmer's market to pick up a cup of coffee and a sweet roll and 2 ears of corn. It's, I'm going to buy my food for the week because I believe strongly in the safety of the food that's at the farmer's market. I believe in its health benefits, its nutrition, and I really want to support my local producer. And so you're finding much higher sales per person, even if you're finding fewer sales overall.
I'm thinking these are the serious shoppers, this is what we did last week when we went to the store, to the farmers market. They advise you to go online, take a look at what's going to be offered. We did that. We did our homework. We were ready to go. We knew where the booths were that we wanted to visit. We went to those booths. We got our stuff and got out. It was 95 degrees, so it was a little nasty with the mask on. Yeah. But I think a lot of people are like that. And you just brought up something, Janie, that I almost lost track of, which is it's National Farmers Market Week.
Yes.
So what are you going to do to celebrate National Farmers Markets in the midst of a pandemic?
Well, I think in National Farmers Market Week, you always call out the value of farmers markets, and that hasn't changed. We believe strongly in the nutritional value, the value of supporting local business, the value of the processes that our producers use to bring food to market. I mean, all of those benefits are there. But we really want to call out that the people that have made these markets happen are really local food heroes, and that these markets have not happened by accident. They take a lot of work. Many times even you'll find in the city of Chicago, but also outside of the city, that they're dealing with multiple regulating agencies. And now with everything shifting and changing, they're having to deal with those regulating agencies on an ongoing basis. They're dealing with some of the social climate challenges as well. And so it's really been a season where we want to celebrate the fact that we have markets. We want to celebrate that they're essential, they're important food access points for everyone, and that they are safe. Just shopping outside in a relatively large space with good air circulation, likely purchasing product that has been touched by far fewer hands than you would find through the traditional food system. We're going to celebrate all those factors and call those out more significantly this week.
Gary Fehr, who we had on for a little bit from Lincoln, Nebraska, he and I were talking the other day, and he said he really likes the no touching the food change. Because
I have heard that from a lot of vendors as well. Bet.
Well, is it possible that that's something that's going to stick around? He said that he used to have this guy come in and he would touch every single jalapeno pepper and then pick out what he thought the perfect one was. And a guy can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
Really
or not take any of them.
Right, exactly. Just touch them and then just leave them there. So it sounds to me like maybe some of these rules will stick around. What do you think, Janie?
I don't know if they'll stick around because we also have to talk about the convenience, especially when we have large volume producers that need to move a lot of product, and the consumer is a help in getting that product purchased and out the door at the farmer's market. But I really think that some of the enhanced food safety, I think it's great that people are being far more aware of what they touch, only touching what they've purchased. I mean, all of those kinds of things really do add food safety enhancement to our markets, and I hope those things stay. I think those are great, and I think also the value of the food's there. I think that's what we're seeing the resurgence in. People really appreciating their farmer producers, really appreciating the fact that our local food system really has stood instead when our traditional food system had a few gaps and hiccups along the way during COVID-19.
Yeah, you can't get a Clausen pickle to save your life. Okay, I have just tried and tried and tried, but that's my little obsession. But you know, in the old days, we used to say, "You break it, you bought it." Now we say, "You touch it, you bought it."
Exactly.
That's all yours. Yes.
Jonathan, you had to with this. You're a smaller market. Did your market become even smaller due to COVID? Did you have to turn people away?
No, we haven't been turning people away, but so we did relaunch in a new location. So as we were talking about before, our former location in the plant, we used to draw 300 to 600 people per market, and really pack the spaces. This new market, a new location, we expected smaller audiences, but also with the outbreak of COVID, even smaller. In some ways, we were deliberately just, our previous model would draw many people in from around the city, and a lot of the money would get back to local vendors. This new model really is meant to get local food out to, much more so to get out to the neighborhood around us. So in many ways, it is much more targeted. And as Janie was saying, people who come and shop in the city, in previous, we definitely had, when you had performances and prepared food, people would come and it was a social atmosphere. It is a convening space. And that's always been I think a great power of farmers markets, but it also distracts from this idea of like we want to get local food out to people as possible. Yeah. In the city of Chicago, DCASE will not approve any market to have prepared foods or cultural things going on. So it is really now it's about the food. You can't get a license to do a market. No, you come and you shop. So there aren't the people that are coming in with the coffee and sitting on the grass.
However, and we have like 30 seconds, Janie, that was always one of the attractions of a farmer's market, is the social aspect of it.
Sure. We believe strongly in the community of farmers markets. I think it's really, really key to make sure that community is called out. You get far more social interactions at a farmer's market. People love seeing their neighbors, sharing stories, all of that. That's great. But hopefully also we really learn to value the food, because that's what it became about in COVID-19. It was about the food and food access for all of our communities, whether it's somebody that uses their link card or whether somebody is able to pay for with cash or credit, whatever the case may be.
Thank you, Janie. We got to go. Thank you, Janie Maxwell. Jonathan Pereira, you can get back to the kids. Peggy and I will be back right after this.
Big fat juicy ones, itchy winky squinty ones, oh how they wiggle and squirm. I bite off the heads and suck out the juice and throw the skins away. Nobody knows how I survive on worms 3 times a day.
I have no idea. Welcome back to the Mike Nowak Show with Peggy Malecki. Do you know how many songs I had to go through to find the version I really wanted? Guess I'll go eat worms. You know how many people have recorded that song?
How many?
I don't know. I did a search and just probably millions. I have no idea, but they're all over the used tubes.
And now we'll have the Jumping Worms version.
There we go. Need to record a Jumping Worms version of that song. By the way, I'm glad you brought that up. Somebody was asking me about that earlier this year either in a garden, I think it was a garden talk before COVID, about jumping worms. And if you're in the Chicago area, we have been invaded by the jumping worms. I call them writhing worms. They do that more than jump, but they're these worms that have sort of invaded parts of the country. I'm trying to remember what the origin. We talked to the guy 2 years ago.
Yeah, it's a long time ago.
Yeah, Illinois Extension guy, and he said basically they're here, and that's the way I treat it. They're unfortunately not as good for your soil as earthworms, but earthworms are not native either. We brought those over from Europe and other parts of the world. The glaciers wiped out most of the worms in North America back in the day, if you were around for the Ice Age. We repopulated parts of the country, and even with earthworms a number of years ago, I was reading about how they're having issues in Minnesota with duff being consumed, and duff is the leaves and the other organic material that fall on the forest floor, about that being consumed.
Overconsumed.
Overconsumed by earthworms. So here's an advice: if you're an angler, or you fans of Mike Jackson, don't throw your worms in the water when you're done, and don't dump them out. Get them out of there because they can cause issues. Maybe what we need to do is have the anglers go for the jumping worms and just use those for bait. But one of the, somebody said, well, you can put them in a plastic, and people tell you this, and it's on the websites and extension says this, if you find a jumping worm, put it in a plastic bag, leave it in the sun, which is a nice way to go, isn't it? But my feeling is, oh gosh, you can't do that with every jumping worm you find. They're all over my yard. And
I think it was New York Times had an article in the last month or two that they're there too. In New York.
They're going to be
they're everywhere.
Yeah. They outcompete the other worms. Isn't that wonderful? It's just like, emerald ash borer. We're going to go after your ash trees now. And speaking of going after things, you and
You've had some issues there.
I've had some issues. I had some issues yesterday. I was trying to put the show together yesterday and went out in the yard to do some watering and some observing, and what I observed were chunks taken out of my tomatoes.
No!
Yeah, I can't believe it. And we have so many tomatoes, and a lot of them had been attacked, and usually it's a little swipe, I don't not even know if it's a bite or if it's just, a nip out of it. And had to toss some. I kept some because I went online to look at that, and I couldn't find a whole lot about what I typed in is it safe to eat a tomato that has been chopped on or a bite taken out of by a squirrel? And somebody had actually done some research on that and came to the conclusion, no, not really. You know.
I think most of what I've seen says no, don't, because you don't know what disease it might have. The animal might be carrying.
See, the one I'm talking about said, no, go ahead, eat them.
Okay, because I've seen ones that say no, don't.
Well, this woman did it because just kind of to spite her partner, and because
there's another reason.
He was saying, you got to throw those away, and so she started doing some research on it, and she couldn't find anything really scientific data that indicated that it was particularly harmful.
I suppose if you cook it into sauce, there's less of a chance.
And that's one of the things some people, you got to get it to 174 degrees and before you can do anything. And she just ate the tomatoes raw and nothing bad happened. And she came to and apparently squirrels rarely have rabies. That's just not one of the things that is an issue. And I'm trying to think what else might be a problem. Now, it's not always squirrels. It could have been raccoons. And basically, the rule of thumb is if the damage is done during the day, it's squirrels. If it's done at night, it might be raccoons because, squirrels are not nocturnal. So all I know is I was not happy. I was not a happy camper. So there's a new rule of thumb in my yard, which I think you already have, which is I get a little tiny blush of color on that tomato. It's coming off the vine.
It's mine. In the house it goes.
Here you go. Let it ripen indoors because it's going to taste just about as good. There's nothing I can do. I mean, my tomato plants are not wide out in the open where squirrels are going to be, feel threatened. I got trees in the yard. They just hang down and grab whatever they want. So.
And I have my wonderful little chipmunk friends.
And what have your chipmunk friends done for you lately?
Let's see. An entire plant in a pot disappeared the other morning. Stepped outside, it was gone. Just a big hole. I mean, it wasn't even left at the side. It was just gone. A little herb, an herb plant. I'm like, what? Where? It's not even there.
They're not even supposed to like herbs, are
No,
they?
they want whatever's in the pot under stuff. They don't eat they don't usually
They
eat
just
the plants.
toss
They go
herbs.
digging for the seed or whatever they're smelling in the root that's food. So
Yeah, I have never seen such aggressive chipmunks as you have in your yard. They put squirrels to shame.
yeah, they're amazing. And I saw somebody post on Facebook the other day. Oh, I saw my first chipmunk, and I thought, I'll bring you a whole box full of them. You want them?
You could do that. You know, you could have the relocation program for chipmunks and ship them off to other people's yards. It's like when I find a grub and I saw something in the Morton Arboretum plant healthcare letter about grubs. By the way, folks, if you find a grub in your lawn, you do not have a grub problem. You have a grub. There's a big difference, okay?
Yes.
Stop grabbing those chemicals the minute your lawn goes brown and do grubs. And what I do is when I find a grub in my lawn, I toss it into my neighbor's yard. And it takes care of the problem.
Is that kind of like a milkweed bomb? Same thing?
Like at the end of the season, take the milkweed bombs and toss those in the...
And put a grub on it, throw the whole thing over there.
Yeah, and a jumping worm. Okay, that's all we got for this hour. The Mike Nowak Show with Peggy Malecki. We're talking community gardens and urban farms in the next hour. We hope you stick around on the network. Go green or
Go home.
Welcome to the second hour of the Mike Nowak Show with Peggy Malecki. This hour is brought to you by Bartlett Tree Experts. Every tree needs a champion. Go to bartlett.com. Here they are again, Peggy Malecki and Mike Nowak.
All I need is good food to eat and make me healthy, wealthy, wide awake. Lettuce, tomatoes, root and bacon. What about those sweet potatoes? All I need is good food to eat. All I need is good food to eat. All I need is good tools to make
welcome back to the program, and that is the perfect song for our show today, because in the first hour we were talking about buying and selling food. In the second hour we're talking about growing food and also selling and buying food, but mostly about the growing of the food, particularly in the city of Chicago. We're very pleased to have with us Sean Ruane, who's Executive Director of Advocates for Urban Agriculture. We also have a couple of gardeners from the city, Mekazin Alexander, who is with Earl's Garden Maze Kitchen Community Garden in the Englewood neighborhood of Chicago. And we have Gina Jamison, the founder of Kuumba-TreAhm Community Garden. Did I come close to pronouncing that?
You're doing great, Mike. That's absolutely correct.
And we know both of these people. Well, Gina worked with us last year on Chicago Excellence in Gardening Awards. You get a ding for that. Thank you for your help. As a matter of fact, I have to take this moment to remind folks that the 60-second garden video challenge is still going on. We are going to be announcing our July winners for that. What you do is you take your camera, your phone, go out to your yard, describe your garden in 60 seconds. And some people have been very creative about it. And you can go to the YouTube page, just type in Chicago Excellence in Gardening Awards on YouTube, and it'll take you to the page, and you can see all those videos that have been put up already and vote for the ones you like. You can vote more than once, and vote for the ones you think are really good. And as I said, there's some really fun stuff, and we just got a lovely little piece on WTTW this week, so that was fun in their news feed, not on air. And more and more people are finding out about this, so take advantage.
You can live anywhere in the world. We would love to see gardens from wherever you are. We got till September 30th. We're going to be doing some giveaways for local people as well. MWRD donated some rain barrels again this year, which will be a random drawing. And we've got some other prizes for people
I believe from City Grange
as well for people who are entering. Yep.
Gift certificates. So, and by the way, speaking of Chicago Excellence in Gardening Awards, Mekazin's garden won an award last year. So thank you. Yeah, congratulations.
Yay.
That's
Mike, my
That was great. Yes, thank you.
I'd like
Gina, what was that?
I'd like to interrupt because I won the Excellence Award of 2018.
Well,
Kuumba-TreAhm Community Garden. So you make a note of that.
okay.
You guys both need to enter this year too.
Sounds good.
I saw your article and I said, wow. And I really appreciate that it's just not for Chicago, that it's worldwide. So that was really, really amazing to read that. That
Yeah,
was amazing.
we're setting ourselves up for pain, I believe. We opened it up to the entire visible universe, but people just on this planet, actually, not Jupiter and Saturn. And yeah, we figured, you know what, on the internet really has no boundaries. So we thought, gardeners everywhere, come on and send us a video. We haven't gotten one outside of Illinois yet, I don't think, but
We're working on it.
Yeah. So congratulations to everybody. That's all the time we have. Good night, everybody. All right.
Oh yeah, wait a minute, community gardens. Wait a second.
Yeah, community garden. Well, and that's the thing about, and that's actually a great jumping off point for this conversation is community gardens and the pride people have in their neighborhoods and the pride people have in growing things and helping people grow things and providing food for neighborhoods and empowerment of those neighborhoods. So it was a little bit disconcerting at the beginning of the year, at February 2nd, actually, when the city of Chicago announced, actually the Department of Water Management released an updated hydrant permit policy. Okay, so this was unexpected, and as I wrote in my blog piece, and I'm sure some people could accuse me of using hyperbole, this was kind of draconian. So I'm going to have you, Sean, start with what happened. What did you find out on February 1st, and how did this affect community gardeners in Chicago?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. So yeah, with that new policy that was established in February, there were a couple of key changes that resulted from it. The first piece was the requirement that every community garden or urban farm that was going to be accessing water from a hydrant had to acquire and install an RPZ, or a reduced pressure zone valve. These are considered, an effective device for preventing backflow contamination into the water supply. So they're a very helpful device in terms of ensuring the security of our water safety. But they come at a high cost, especially in the first year when you're trying to install them. And because this policy was implemented kind of with no conversation or consultation with Chicago's community garden or urban farm network, we were totally thrown off guard by it. And now, as a result of that, small community gardens, urban farms are expected to cover a cost of somewhere between $1,800 all the way up to potentially over $3,000 just to access the hydrant. That's not even talking about the water rate. That just to access the hydrant in itself, because of the cost of the RPZ unit, the hydrant cap and key, other costs that are associated with accessing water.
Is that annually, or is that a one-time?
So there are some annual costs associated with that, but the bulk of that cost is just in year one. So that cost gets reduced pretty significantly in year 2, year 3, once you get that RPZ unit acquired and installed. So that was one piece of it. There were also some other things. The application process got a bit more complex. At one point, they were requiring gardens to be a 501c3 nonprofit, which many community gardens are not and have no interest in being a nonprofit. And then there were some discrepancies in terms of the zoning policy with the water policy that just didn't, the city's policy was contradicting itself. So that was kind of the main bullet points of the updates that were made with that original policy that was implemented in February.
Those are pretty big bullet points.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll get back to the lack of transparency and the lack of communication with the urban ag community in Chicago, but I want to go to Mekazin and because because you're quoted in the Sun Times piece, and you can find all this information on my website, MikeNovak.net. But you had some surprises when you went to fill out the application. Tell us of your story, Mekazin.
So our garden, Earl's Garden Maze Kitchen, is in, actually, I'd say like year 4. The previous 2 years, we went online and we applied for a permit. And, you know, we went through the steps, the process, and then we were, you know, granted a permit for really up to a year. Like we would apply sometime in February or March and ask for access from, say, April, you know, the growing season for us from April to about October. And so I went online this year and I applied and I got rejected. Then I applied again and I got rejected. And so third time I was like, okay, so what is really going on? So I called someone in the city. I actually called the contact person that I worked with last year, because last year they had changed it where you need to apply, but you need to put all this information on a letterhead of your organization. So I thought, well, maybe, you know, something else had changed that I wasn't made aware of. So let me call. So I called and I found out that I was being denied because I didn't have an RPZ. And I said, well, what is an RPZ? So no one could tell me initially what the device was, how much the device cost. When we start calling around for the device outside of the city, we found out then that there's certain sizes of RPZs. So there was no information about the device where we could actually find out initially what it was going to cost, what size we needed. And then we were told we had to have a city inspector to come out with a certified plumber who would initially approve and test the RPZ. And once that was approved by the city person, then we could move forward and begin to use the fire hydrant. But there was no information as to, you know, I do understand that the city cannot recommend any one source, but they could have really offered some sort of, well, here's a list of recommended people or a list of, you know, vendors you could actually go to.
Approved vendors or something.
Right, and also give us like some sort of cost of what we were expecting to spend. So none of that information was given to us up front. And so after the third rejection, it just got to be, well, what is really going on and how do we really proceed? And, you know, and that's when we started working with AUA.
Yeah, it sounds like a logistical nightmare. And as I mentioned before, there was not only, it sounds like there was not only a lack of transparency, but a lack of logistical setup on the part of the city, where they were not prepared to deal with all the questions. And how many, Sean, we're going to have to break here. How many community gardens are there in Chicago?
Well, we're probably not accounting for all of them, but on the Chicago Urban Agriculture Mapping Project, there's over 800 sites that are accounted for. I think that there are easily probably over 1,000 community gardens in the city, whether that's a school garden or a kind of a broader community garden.
We need to break here. We'll have more on this conversation, Chicago's war on community gardens, when we come back.
About to show y'all what being a real gangster's all about, you feel me? I don't rely on no food stamps, cause every season I'm harvesting some new plants. It got me feeling like gardening is gangster. Gangster, gangster. Gardening is gangster. Yeah, I can't trust my own government, so I got off my hamster wheel and
know that. On the show today, we have Sean Ruane, the Executive Director of Advocates for Urban Agriculture. We have Gina Jamison from Kuumba-TreAhm Community Garden, and Mekazin Alexander from Earl's Garden Maze Kitchen on the south side of Chicago. We're telling gardening stories because it has suddenly become very difficult to get water in the city of Chicago because the city instituted some new rules. We talked about that earlier. We will go back into that, but I want to get over to Gina Jamison and tell us about the experience in your garden this year with regard to finding water.
Well, let me just say, I have been trying to acquire the hydrant access for several years. To my frustration, I've given up. I applied let's say in 2013, the application, when I went to the alderman's office, who was Alderman Fehr at that time, they couldn't find my application. So I reapplied. Never received a response from that. So the following year, and during that time, it was correct. You had to be a 501c3. I had a 501c3. That's why I felt that I was eligible. So then the next year I applied through an organization, and it just was some kind of, we lost a drop in communication. Then another year, which I think was 2 years ago, we were told that we'd have to get the key on assignment from our alderman's office. We had to sign up to use the key, so it would be sign in, sign out. Totally frustrated. So I just totally gave up. Now, seeing that the AUA has stepped in, it's just like so magnificent. My prayers have been answered, because the access that I have for water is rain barrels. And just as Mekazin has said, to rely on the water in Chicago, I also have access to the landlord graciously has let us use his water. Now we found out that there's water seepage into the building. So now that's going to have to be canceled. Now we're going to have to totally rely on rain barrels. And that is hard work. Just as Mekazin said, even with the hydrant that we would graciously will probably get, it would be a 200-foot hose that we would have to connect. But whatever it takes for that to happen, we're just so ready, because it's just so, we can't work without water. You know, our gardens will not flourish, you know, and it'll be a Panmanian, you know, for us not to have our produce in our gardens to flourish. So
yeah,
that's our process.
During the break, Mekazin was talking about praying for rain, and that's not a strategy, really. That is workable. And she was also dragging a hose from a house to their garden. We did that in my neighborhood in 2011 when we needed water, and it was my house was the one that was supplying the water to the community garden, and it's 5 doors down from the garden. And so we put together 3 or 4 hoses, and you'd have to coil them and run them out to the garden, and either fill up the rain barrels or just water with it. And it's not, you know, that's one of the ways people get by. Somebody says, okay, I'll suck it up, I'll pay extra on my water bill so that we can keep this community garden going. So Sean, I imagine you've gotten an earful from community and gardens and urban farms this year as this process has gone forward. You said you met with the city repeatedly and managed to get some of the rules changed. For instance, now every garden doesn't need to be a 501c3, which is just a nutty thing anyway, because most of these gardens are ad hoc. They're people in the community, they get together, they decide to do something good for the community. That's what happened in our neighborhood. We chased the gangbangers out because we put a community garden in on the corner lot, and that happens a lot in the city of Chicago. Yeah. So that got you going, but you've also reached out and are trying to help people with this, aren't you, Sean?
Yeah, so we've been hearing about this issue from growers since early March. It's now at the point now where we've heard from dozens and dozens and dozens of folks who are either gardeners or farmers around the city doing this work. And so, yeah, over the last couple months, we've worked with a coalition of all of those growers as well as other food system organizations. And, you know, we're able to meet with the city a number of times and get a few of those, the policy shifts made that we were looking for. So now the water rate is more accessible for both urban farms and community gardens. The nonprofit requirement is no longer there. They're only requiring the certification of the RPZ valve once a year as opposed to twice a year. So things like that.
It's still a fee.
It's still a fee, correct? But
it's still a lot of that's still a lot of money for an ad hoc organization, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And so we're happy about some of the changes that were made, but ultimately, when we got the new updated policy back from the city, we reached out to every person that we had heard from to say, does this work for you? Is this actually something that you can use? Is this actually affordable, accessible? And the vast majority of people said no.
Partly because the system is still so Byzantine, that it's impossible to navigate, and that's what I've been reading and hearing about, is that you fill out the form and you still don't get any action on it, and people have been waiting weeks and weeks for the city to do something, and then they don't do it.
Yeah, we put together a grower's guide to help growers navigate the new policy. You can find that on our website, and we honestly put that together as well as like an exercise for us to try to understand all of the different steps. It's a four-page document.
Yeah, but you've got all the links in there of where people need to click to get this and this. I love the fact you had all the images of this is what the valve looks like, this is this, this is that. Really helpful.
And we've got the link on my website, MikeNowak.net, in the blog post, but let's have Kayla post a link just to that
PDF.
The PDF on that, and so people who want that information can get it readily. Let's get it out there. Okay, we're going to need to break here. When we come back, the one thing we haven't even brought up yet, all of this happened during a pandemic, and the city has been really inflexible during a pandemic. And you know what else we might talk about is the Department of the Environment. How come we don't have one yet?
Crickets?
Yes.
Where did that go?
And buddy, it's the Mike Nowak Show with Peggy Malecki. We will be right back. And if you're wondering why I'm playing that, what that is the Vegetable Orchestra. I found that on the used tubes a couple of years ago, and those are all vegetables. The instruments are made out of vegetables, and they were playing those instruments. Yeah, it's kind of cool. It's like 4 minutes long. We're not going to hear all of it, but
we should put the link up. At some point.
Let me track that down. And I bet if I typed it in, I can find it. Welcome back to the Mike Nowak Show with Peggy Malecki. We're talking to folks about gardening in Chicago and how hard it is because the city has decided to make it harder with water restrictions. First, as I mentioned while we were going out to the break, this is in the midst of a pandemic, and we all know how valuable it is to have grow your own vegetables, have local food available. Mekazin, is that something that benefits the people in your neighborhood?
Oh, absolutely. Our garden actually started with the city's purchased the vacant lot for $1. So we purchased our lot for $1, and we were actually one of the first, of many in Inglewood, because it was started by the organization called Residents Association of Greater Inglewood, RAGE. Actually initiated the opportunity for people to purchase vacant lots in the city. And so Inglewood had about 5,000 vacant lots. And so we purchased one with the intention of feeding the community, teaching young people about gardening, and hosting an array of events. And so it still is very vital for us to have a workable partnership with the city, because we need to be able to water our garden, take our food, share it with community, and be able to teach, like I said, young people, it's important. So water, it plays a big part in our sustainability. Moving forward, we're hoping that we can get a policy that will work for most. I'm sure we won't be able to do it for all, but for most. And for a small community garden, it really becomes important, that we have water access and a good relationship with the city so that we can, make those things happen.
Well, we don't need to discourage people from growing things. We need to encourage them to grow things. And this takes us back to why this happened, Sean, because this policy was announced out of the blue in February. You claim that you were not notified in advance. The urban garden community was not notified. What the heck is the city of Chicago thinking? I'm wondering what bureaucrats got their hands on this to say, hey, I know a great way we can throw a spoke to the wheels of gardening. Let's just do this policy.
what budget needed more money?
Yeah, you got to wonder. It kind of resembles. I know what you're talking about, the native plant thing, where people, the weed ordinance, where people grow native plants in the yard and they get fined $600 or $1,200 for that. That's some kind of money grab too. So that must have surprised you quite a bit. And here you are, Sean, walking into this as the new executive director of AUA. It's not as if the city didn't know that your organization exists and other organizations exist. What's with the freelancing on the part of the city?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's really hard for me to know the answer to that. We've obviously had lots of conversations with them, and what we've heard from them is that they were trying to create a policy that aligned more with the municipal code. At the same time, it seems like it is incredibly excessive, the lengths that folks have to go to be able to access water, just the amount of administrative work and the amount of barriers in place. I think a large part of it is due to the fact that, we see these stories about hydrants being inappropriately used around the city, and gardeners and farmers are lumped into that, as and I think oftentimes the city, the Department of Water Management is treating gardeners and farmers from a mentality of enforcement, when really they should be, as you said earlier, they should be treating them from a mentality of, we want to encourage these people, we want to support these people, we want to help make their job easier to be able to grow food for their communities. And that's just not the case right now. One of the new requirements of this updated policy is that every organization that gets a hydrant permit has to enter into a legal agreement with the city of Chicago and their landowner if they're not the owner of the land, and they have to hand over general liability insurance. And it's kind of a complex legal agreement.
That's
so
expensive.
It kind of implies that you maybe have to take on some legal fees. Like we talked about earlier, the majority of gardens are small networks of people. They're not necessarily nonprofits. To ask of that is just incredibly over the top. And again, I think speaks to that mentality of enforcement rather than support.
Absolutely.
Go ahead, Mekazin.
I'm sorry. I was going to say absolutely. I mean, we are just a partnership, and we're just me and my husband and whoever in our community, that's willing to work and volunteer with us. We don't have those kind of funds to be able to pay for RPZ, a plumber, insurance. I mean, and we have fruits and vegetables that are dying because we don't really have water unless we run it 200 feet from our home, or again, rely on rain. So it's really become a big problem this year.
And here and what progress you've been able to make is halfway through the summer now. A lot of gardeners probably just gave up because they couldn't access water and they couldn't navigate the system. And again, it bears repeating, this is in the middle of a pandemic. Where's the flexibility on the part of the city to say, you know what, those rules, maybe we need to look at them. Let's go back to something a little simpler for now. And then we'll continue to talk. But no, that's not the way the city works. It's like, no, we got the rules, and you got to abide by them. And so if you decide that your community garden can't make it anymore, oh well, try something else.
Sean, do you think some of this is because of a disconnect if it's on paper? Gee, what is this stuff on paper? And they don't actually realize, there's that disconnect of community gardens, food, security, etc., versus how it looks on paper.
Yeah, I can answer that. Gina, were you going to say something?
Well, I was just going, to add to what Mekazin was saying. The whole process of the Kuumba-TreAhm Garden is to get the community to let's speak to each other, let's talk to each other, and let's get the environment of the corner in a bad position, and let's remove that. And that's what our community garden has done. We don't have that issue on the corner anymore. Now we have the community right there on the block coming out. When we do have a block club, they come out now and they bring their grills out. They come and they participate, and that's the whole vision. Also educating our young people, being connected with the school, with a Cather. Those elementary students come into the garden, Kuumba-TreAhm Garden, and they do the full education of seedlings growing, maintaining, harvesting, and then have a party. That's the whole idea. And if we don't have water, for this to happen, to grow that which we have, it's not going to work. We're just going to die. And that's not what we want to do. And to have to rely on rainwater and access to some kind of way of water, it's so frustrating. And then with the pandemic, we're already stressed. Now we've got this.
Everybody's stressed now.
Everybody's already stressed, and now we're stressed about how are we going to eat. And in the communities that have the community gardens are really food deserts. And then now you find with the pandemic, people are more encouraged to try to start growing their own food. Now they want to see what the grocery stores, are not providing the best food. So now people are becoming more interested, and we don't want to lose that passion. We don't want to lose that enthusiasm. And if we can't get rainwater for people to see what really happens when you grow a seed, and the end result is the most magnificent feeling in the whole wide world. So that's, everyone's ready, rip run, ready to go. So the city has really a responsibility to make their city better. This is what we need to do. Community gardens is really a wonderful avenue.
Yes, it is. And when you think about the way the city is responding now, it's remarkably tone deaf. They just don't get it. And it goes they don't. And it goes back to the dissolution of the Department of the Environment under Rahm Emanuel. Thank you, Rahm, for doing that. Because that's where people would have gone in the past to navigate this sort of thing. And the Department of the Environment was very responsive. We still don't have it, Lori Lightfoot. You promised it in your mayoral campaign, and I'm still waiting for a Department of the Environment. All right, we have
Mike, to your point, I'm sorry. I was going to say, Mike, to your point, if we had the Department of Environment in place, we probably wouldn't be going through some of these issues, because I think someone would have actually taken the time to really think through the effects of this type of policy on community gardens and urban farms.
Yeah. That's the point, is that you have those people, that's what they're there for, that whole thing, and local food comes under that category. We have about a minute, Sean. I was just going to ask, what's next? What happens now? You've got a petition. We need to mention that, and we need to put that petition up. I've got it on my website, which is to get a change of policy, right?
Yeah, we've got a petition out there to get, they've updated the policy, but specifically highlighting the fact that this new legal agreement is not doable for the majority of growers. And so wanting to make sure that the city understands that. So please sign the petition, help the city of Chicago and the mayor's office to understand that positive steps have been made, but we need to continue improving this policy. To Peggy's point, I think we from the very beginning have been asking, listen, we want gardeners and farmers to comply with municipal code, but for 2020, we have to put things in place to get people water access immediately in the middle of a pandemic. They are essential operations.
I gotta let it go. All right, thank you, Sean Ruane, Mekazin, Alexander. Thank you, Gina Jamison. We'll be right back with Rick DiMaio.
What's the weather? It's sunny. What's the weather? It's rainy altogether. That's the weather. Sun, rain, wind, storm, hot, cold, cool, warm. What's the weather? It's cloudy. What's the weather? It's windy altogether. That's the weather.
Welcome back to the Mike Nowak Show with Peggy Malecki. That is the weather song, and it's that guy that and I don't have his name in front of me. I can't believe I don't have that there, but he does those children's songs that are slightly more sophisticated than the average children's songs.
And that's Rick's new theme, right?
I believe it is. We might be using that for a while. Is that okay with you, Rick DiMaio? Hello?
What's the weather? I'm here.
and he sings.
Really?
It's the singing weather guy.
What's the weather?
Yeah,
all
that's
right.
it. What's the weather? I don't know. I'll play it once in a while. I'm not going to play it all the time, but that's one thing.
That's a good thing.
We have an almost hurricane going on in Florida.
Yeah. Well, we did have a hurricane, and it decided to ramp back down to a tropical storm. But I think most everybody saw that coming. This thing never really had any sort of what you say perfect scenario for it. It was moving a lot over land masses, some mountainous regions of the Caribbean. It had a really ragged outflow from the word go. There was a lot of dry air on the front side of it, and it was moving into a high shear zone in the upper levels of the atmosphere. What it does have going for it is plentiful amount of warm water at the surface. 85, 86 degrees is about as warm as I've seen it this early in the Caribbean, particularly in the area of what they call the Florida Straits. It still may ramp up to a Cat 1. There's already some wind gusts as high as 65 miles an hour. All we need is another 8 or 9. You got yourself a hurricane. But even if it doesn't become a hurricane, this actually is, I think, the best way to look at it, Mike and Peg, as a dry run for what states like Florida and maybe Texas could see over the next 2 or 3 weeks. And it's not only how you handle a hurricane, but how do you handle, hundreds and thousands and possibly millions of people needing to evacuate into shelters run by the state during the pandemic. That raises a lot of questions, doesn't it?
And doing subsequent rescues as well.
Yeah, and rescues, you're talking about at what point, do you have to stress your, state resources to the point where you have nothing left? And this is also after, Peg, we saw the last 2 years of, widespread hurricane damage, and as you pointed out, rescues as well. So if any of these governors think that they have it easy over the next 3 or 4 months, they have another thing coming. And here we are already, letter I. ACES is how you pronounce it, and a lot of people have had difficulty with that. I don't know what the letter J will be, but it was funny just kind of listening to a few people, 2 or 3 days ago trying to say it. They're like, ICASIS, Isaias, no, it's ACES. And this was one of those storms, believe it or not. I think it was 3 years ago. What is that, Peg?
I think it's ICASIS, even.
Right. And one of the letter I storms about 3 years ago, believe it or not, was going to be ISIS. And when everything was happening globally with ISIS, they decided that was probably not a good name, so they changed that. But yeah, a lot of things happening in the tropics. We do have another depression off the coast of Africa, which could become a tropical storm over the next couple of days. That does look like it has the potential to be one, but it's still too far away to make any sort of judgment on it. But nonetheless, once the current storm moves close to Florida, South Carolina, North Carolina, you'll probably see, 50, 60 mile per hour winds, 2 to 4 foot tidal surges, some heavy rain. But on the scale of 1 to 10, as far as it being an impact goes, with 1 being low and 10 being high, this will probably be about a 1.5 to about a 2.
Yeah, I saw somebody on television yesterday saying, it's a Cat 1. We're not going to do anything. And just a resident there, they were being asked if they're going to take any precautions.
Well, yeah, because they've been through these so many times, and as long as you take the necessary things outside, inside, it's like, how many times do you hear people in the Midwest going, oh my God, did you hear? We're under a tornado watch. We go through it just like they go through a Cat 1. So I think the level of criticism that we may throw at people for dealing with the Cat 1 in a nonchalant way is the same way that we deal with tornado watches. We know that the chances of getting hit are small, and there's nothing to really do about it. Now, if you take a tornado warning, that's a totally different story from that standpoint.
Yeah, absolutely. So is this going to produce a lot of rain as it moves up the coast?
No, not at all. Matter of fact, the fact that it's kind of hugging the coast, the heaviest rain is probably going to be more so on the north and northeast side. The Outer Banks will probably get a lot of rain, but those areas actually need it. They've been somewhat dry over the last month. And because it's going to move pretty quickly, once it gets caught up in that southwesterly flow, it's going to be moving at about 15 to 20 miles an hour. So that's going to be it from that standpoint. But what's amazing to me is driving through areas of northern Illinois and southern Wisconsin the last couple of days. I always say, Mike and Peg, that the first week and second week of August is my favorite because everything is blooming, whether it's the trees, whether it's the corn, the soybeans, the things that people planted, but most of the time, this time of the year, the perennials, and particularly the ones that are indigenous to Illinois, like the Queen Anne lace. I love that kind of stuff. And to see the different layers of purple and yellow and white, there's nothing better than this time of the year. Soak it up, because we know that in 2 months, it's October, could be completely different by then. This is about as good as it gets.
Yeah, I remember last October's Halloween snowstorm. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, we don't want to think about that. We don't want to think about that too soon.
It was like
But
Halloween.
we finished up. Go on, Mike.
I'd just say Halloween got canceled, but it wasn't COVID. It was a snowstorm. So there you go.
It was a snowstorm, yeah, maybe a sign of things to come. But we finished up the month of July. I don't know if you guys talked about this. 5.2 degrees above normal. That's the 4th warmest July on record. When you add in the 5 degrees above normal we had in the month of June, so far the first 2 months of the summer, the first 2/3, really, when you think about it that way, literally within the top 5 warmest of all time. Are we going to stay that way? No. It looks like the pattern becomes somewhat cooler, particularly today. Yesterday made it only into the mid-70s. Today we may clock 80 degrees. There's a lot of sunshine that's coming through between now and the next hour or so, and that'll be with us up until about 3 or 4 o'clock before a weak front comes through, cools things down, brings us some rain late this afternoon, and gives us kind of like a cloudy, kind of a wet pattern for tomorrow and Tuesday, and we stay somewhat below normal for the next 7 days. So not only are we going to be below normal temperature-wise, but nothing in the way of any hot weather, probably through the first half of the month. And I would easily say at this point that we'll be near normal for the rest of the month from here on out.
All right. Thanks a lot, Rick. For everybody listening, go green or
go home.